Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, my name is Shalarian Williams. I am the president of the Lee County Bar Association Young Lawyers Division. I want to thank everyone for attending our career path in the law CLE and luncheon today. And we are super excited. We have some awesome panelists to come talk to you guys about the different career paths they've taken in the law. But before we jump into our panelists, I do want to invite up Andrew Bonnier from the Lee County Legal Aid Society, who has a really awesome opportunity for you guys. So Andrew.
Absolutely, thank you. Good morning or good afternoon now, everybody. It's a pleasure to be in front of the Young Lawyers Division. It's nice to see a bunch of young lawyers. I am personally one of those two things. Happy to tell actually young lawyers about a particular opportunity that I think should interest all of you, because you have learned, having gone into whatever field you're now in, that law school didn't teach you squat about how to do the actual thing that you're actually doing. You had to go and learn as a practical matter how to do that thing. If law school just gives you the framework to learn it. One of the great things about what I'm here to talk to you about, the Self-Help Center that we run in partnership with the clerk of the court in the courthouse and via Zoom now, is that you get every single type of case imaginable. People come in, they have really, really fascinating stories. And I actually have with us today, Travis Russell, who has been a volunteer. I don't know how many hours, I couldn't even calculate them all, that Travis Russell sat and listened to story after story after story, and they are actually fascinating. Can I get a witness?
Some of them rival my PE stories.
That's right. So you have people that actually have something that is going on in their life, you hear their story, and then in 20 minutes with a panel of anywhere between 5 and 10 other lawyers, we formulate a real world solution for those people on the spot. And I mean, it is rapid fire Gatling gun style, helping one person after another with one individual situation after another. And you sit there and you learn, because sometimes we don't know. And you also learn how to direct people and focus them on what matters and what's important. Your Honor, Judge Sweat, you may not be aware of this, but judges actually have to listen to a lot of unreasonable people spewing a bunch of irrelevant nonsense all the time. Yeah. One of the things that we're able to do—
only a little bit this morning.
And then there's pro se. One of the things that hopefully we're able to do is focus these people's attention on what the judges actually want to hear, on the facts of the matter, so we're actually able to give legal advice, legal strategies, and then boom, move on to the next one, boom, move on to the next one. So it is a tremendous opportunity to, 1, help people, 2, learn about every various field of law imaginable, and 3, help out the judiciary a bit and hopefully help people streamline their cases. So we do this every Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 5, and you can come for a half hour, you can come for 45 minutes, you can come for 4 hours, you can come for as much as you want, and when you're done, you will get one of these certificates, and you can use this with the Florida Bar because you were supposed to be doing pro bono service, and this certainly more than counts. And if you want to join in for however much time you want, we would just adore having you. So I will leave a sign-up sheet here near the front-ish if anybody would like to sign it. But quite frankly, even if you blow off the sign-up sheet, we still want to see you. We'd still love to have you. There are Zoom links that we send out so you can join from the comfort of your desk again for however long you want, and we'd love to have you. Love to see you there. Any questions, anybody? Thank you for your time. Hope I enjoy this presentation.
Thank you, Andrew.
Be sure to enjoy the popcorn chicken.
All right. So thank you, Andrew. That was very informative. So today on our panel, we have the Honorable Andrew Sweat, who is a 20th Judicial Circuit Lee County judge.
That's
We
me.
Chair number 1. We have Mrs. Kayla Richmond Miller, who is a stockholder and family law attorney with Henderson, Franklin, Starnes, and Holtz, VA. And we have Michael Anthony Pica, who's a chief assistant statewide prosecutor with the Office of the Attorney General Statewide Prosecution. So we're just going to jump into it. Okay, first question is for Judge Sweat. If you could please give us a brief history of your background and your path to the bench.
From college,
Sure.
No,
Sure.
Start from birth in.
My path to the bench started when I was 19 years old. I had quit my freshman year of college. And at the end of the first semester, I was at Wake Forest playing soccer, and the coach didn't think I was as good a soccer player as I thought I was. So I quit. Went back to our farm, and my dad, and it's a longer story, I couldn't make this short story. So my dad and I sat down one day after some hard work, and I said, I think I want to go back to college. And he said, that's a good idea. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I think I'll be a lawyer. And he goes, well, that's a good occupation. You should try to be a judge. That's a really honorable thing to do. And I looked at him and he looked at me and we just started laughing. And then 30 something years later, here I am. That's how we got here. I was a prosecutor for 5 years. I practiced civil litigation, business litigation, construction defect litigation, and some criminal defense for 17 years at a local law firm. It's called Not Ebellini Hart now. And then I've been a judge about 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Miss Richmond Miller, can you please explain to us a little bit about your background and how you became a partner at Henderson Franklin Starnes and Holmes?
Yeah, so I have a very vanilla story. I went to college. I graduated from Fort Myers High School. I went to college at USF. I ran track and field there. And then I went to Stetson Law School. I had this ambition to go to DC and do some sort of program that my parents thought was crazy of me to try to do. So I was like, okay, I'll go to law school. They had a business actually in town, and their attorney was Cora Malloy. I don't know if any of you know her. She's an attorney now at Morgan & Morgan, but she was an attorney for a long time at Henderson Franklin. And so I went to lunch one day with her and my mom, and I thought she was just like so cool. So I had to go and be an attorney just like her.
She is cool.
And yeah, so that was my introduction to the law. I actually have no one in the law in my family or any sort of background like that at all. But she was the one who introduced me to being a lawyer. And so I went to law school, and then I started at Henderson Franklin about 8 years ago. And I've been there ever since. Henderson Franklin kind of has like a two-step process to partnership. And so I became a partner about 2 years ago, and then a stockholder in January of this year.
Awesome. Yep. And Mr. Pika, can you please give us a brief history about your background and how you became a statewide prosecutor?
I was born and raised in Staten Island, New York. I went to college in Drew University. After college, I wanted to travel Europe, and my parents, said they weren't going to fund that. I rebelled and said I was going to go to California or Florida, despite that. I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I was into like writing and history, but I wasn't a math science guy. So, once my parents left me out of the room and said, I needed to continue my studies or, I'm on my own type of thing, I decided to go to law school. I ended up going to St. Thomas over in Miami. And at that time, when I was younger, I was an athlete, and I realized I wasn't good enough to be a pro. But when I went to law school, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a sports attorney. I'm going to do entertainment law, things of that nature. And took me a little while to realize that it's going to be difficult and not, something maybe I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be picking up dry cleaning for people, or, when I was an attorney. So I got a job as a prosecutor, and I've been a prosecutor ever since. I would say that two things that impacted that were probably the economy collapse is part of the reason I didn't jump ship. And the other was, I sort of fell in love with the work. Sometimes things just happen. And, I think my story is just happened,
All right. So first question is for Your Honor. Did you have a mentor in the legal field? And if so, who was your mentor and how did you find them?
It's a man named George Knott, works for Knott Ebellini Hart. When I was at the state attorney's office for just under 5 years, and I needed to go make some money. So I went and interviewed with them. Tom Hart works for Knott whatever, there's been various names, not Ebellini Hart. Tom Hart works for him. His dad owned a dairy here in town. And so I have that connection because my dad's in the dairy business. Met George Knott and we hit it off right away because he likes to yell at people and I just laugh at him when he yells at me. And he's one of the best litigators here in town, I think. So I went to work for him and learned a lot about working hard, working lots of hours and litigating civil cases. So he's a good friend of mine, and I take advice from him.
He was my soccer coach when I was in third grade.
With his
Way
daughter,
back.
with his daughter,
Yeah.
Lauren.
Mr. Pika, same question. Do you have a mentor and how did you find your mentor?
I don't have a mentor. You know, I've sort of gone it alone the majority of the time. You know, my first job was at the state attorney's office in Punta Gorda. And, you know, I came from Miami and before that I was, the tri-state area. So I was a bit of an outsider. After 3 years in Punta Gorda, I transferred to the Fort Myers office. And at that point, I didn't come through misdemeanor with all those attorneys. And so I was a bit of an outsider, even though I was part of the same agency. Since I've been in statewide prosecution, you know, my closest offices are Tampa and Lauderdale. So we're sort of on an island by ourselves here in Fort Myers. So I didn't have anyone that I could point to and be like, you know, I wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't for this person. I could say that, you know, the bosses I have now have been very good to me. I could say when I was in, you know, Punta Gorda, now Judge Mason, but before that he was Prosecutor Mason. You know, he sort of took me under his wing a little bit, and that was very helpful. But yeah, I unfortunately I sort of had to do a lot of it just on my own. This is going to sound silly, but you know, my father was an immigrant and he owned his own business, and so a lot of how I handle myself was just watching my father, watching how he ran his business, how he ran his his crews and things of that nature. And so, you know, I just looked at him and said, I'll try to do what he did, but you know, he did it in a delicatessen. I'm going to do it in the field of law. And so, I guess my dad, yeah.
All right, awesome. Ms. Richmond Miller, if you had to give advice to a new attorney or a third-year law student who is trying to decide what area of law they would like to pursue, what advice would you give them?
That's interesting because I'm kind of like Michael Anthony Pica in the sense that family law kind of just happened for me. I did a summer associate at Henderson, a summer associateship at Henderson Franklin. Through one of those, you get to experience all different types of law. I ended up sitting in on these depositions where this Russian woman was trying to abscond with her dementia husband and wasn't coming back and was going to kill him. And there was all these crazy details about it. So I got hooked in family law thinking all the cases were that interesting. They are not. Most of them are not that interesting, but those are interesting facts. So I got sucked in and happened to really like it and develop a career in it. So I would say get a taste of everything as much as you can while you're a young lawyer. I'll tell you 8 years in, now that I realize that not all the cases are that exciting, it's not so easy to switch if you want to switch fields. So you should try to get a taste in whatever you can do. I know as a young attorney, I said yes, basically to everything. So whatever someone needed me to do, whatever a partner needed me to do, whatever another associate needed help with. I remember doing research projects on like lemon law cases, which were really interesting at the time. So just try to get a taste of everything. If you're going to switch, you should do it early in your practice because you start to get kind of ingrained in what you're doing and you get really good at it. And so you want to stay and you build a client base and things like that. So that's what I would say.
I would concur with that statement strongly.
Next question is going to be for your honor. What skills have you developed what skills would you say has helped you advance in your legal career?
Humor.
How was that?
Humor.
Humor. I don't try to be funny, just somehow I'm funny. I think I'm a litigator. At heart, I'm a litigator. I've tried many different cases. I think being able to get up in front of people and try to influence them, I have a skill at that. I don't have to do it anymore, except for a couple of lawyers trying to get them to do what I want them to do. But I can try a case. I have influence. I'm able to influence people. I used to run a soccer club here in town, and there was a board, and I was able to convince everyone to do what I wanted them to do. And one of our quote unquote soccer professionals always said, "Well, that's no fair. You're a lawyer. You have influence over people." I said, "It has nothing to do with me being a lawyer. I just am able to influence people." So I think being able to influence people is one of the best skills I have.
And Mr. Pico, same question.
The judge sort of stole my thunder there a little bit. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Look, I think that people should always try to better themselves. And so when you have a weak spot, you should work on that to be better in your weak spot. But to answer that question, I think you have to work with your strengths. When I realized I wasn't going to be a sports agent, I figured I would go work at the state attorney's office or the public defender office. Well, I was going to go work for one of these governmental agencies because I wanted trial experience. And the reason I wanted trial experience was because my skill set, I was very comfortable in front of people. I was comfortable, arguing and things of that nature. So I figured I would go work at the state attorney's office or the public defender's office. I'd stay there for a handful of years, hone my skills, and then, sell myself to some big money civil firm or something along those lines. So, I was sort of working to work with your strengths. And if you do think you want to be a litigator, I would recommend going to work for the PD or the state attorney's office. The one piece of advice that I would give, and I'm going to, mirror, Ms. Richmond Miller again, is that, if you go there for experience, you probably got to leave after 2 to 4 years type of thing, because after that, you start to get pigeonholed and it becomes difficult. But for me, I wanted to be a trial attorney, and there was no better place to do that than at the SAO or the PD, where, you're there for 10 minutes and you're already in a jury trial type of thing.
And Ms. Richmond Miller, same question. Skill? Yeah, what skill do you feel like really helped advance your legal career?
So it's not exactly a skill. It would be more like a trait, and I would say fear. So, and I say fear because you're afraid to fail for clients. You're afraid to look stupid in front of a judge. You don't want to let a partner down if they've asked you to take care of something for a client. So I would say that having a fear of failure and not wanting to fail and wanting to, prove myself in this practice area actually really propelled me forward, because again, going back to, I said yes a lot because I didn't want someone to think that I was not capable of doing something, even though half the time I wasn't probably capable of doing it. I had to learn it really fast, and then I had to try to be as good as I could at it. So I would say just having that trait of maybe fear is a weak word to use, but really having this fear to stay on the edge of your seat and really propel yourself to do something great is what I would say helped me keep going. I took a lot of assignments. I overworked myself. I went to every marketing event just for fear of not having work, I think, a lot of times. Not being prepared, a fear of not having enough work I know I work for a big firm, so I don't have that solo practitioner fear of putting food on the table type of fear, but I think in any sort of practice area, you have something that keeps you going. And I would say it would be, to be prepared and to do the best that I could at the job. And so I was always afraid of not doing that. So that kept me going.
Thanks. Here's a good
That's a great answer.
Definitely. The next question I have for you is, can you describe a typical day for you, if there's anything such as a typical day, based off of your current position?
Me?
Correct.
Oh gosh. Okay, so you draft a lot of marital settlement agreements, where people are arguing over who is keeping the vacuum cleaner. Last week I did one over blender, who kept the ninja blender, things like that. So you draft a lot of marital settlement agreements. In family law, you do a lot of different things actually. So adoptions, guardianships, divorces, child custody, child support issues, domestic violence. So any day, I mean, I want to say a fun day because the topic's not necessarily fun, but a more interesting day would be one where there's litigation where you do get to go to court and you're representing someone, who has been in a domestic violence situation, and you're either helping them get protection, or more often than not, someone has been falsely accused of being a perpetrator of domestic violence. And so you're, granting them the opportunity to keep their rights and not have an injunction against them. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of client management in family law. People are very scared. So even though, speaking of fear, people are very scared about what's going to happen to them because they don't understand the law. So you do a lot of talking to people on the phone about, like I just got off the phone with a lady right before coming here about, where to enroll her child at school. So you're talking just daily decisions for families all the time, calming them down, a lot of calming down. I had trial this month, which was exciting. It doesn't happen all the time. So, I don't think there's any typical day, but a lot of drafting, a lot of problem solving. Family law, I would say, is the law itself is not so complicated. It is not business and tax and code after code. It is pretty straightforward when you read the law from the book, but applying it and trying to do creative thinking to allow people to solve these daily problems that they have or that they come up with on their own is kind of what I do all day. Problem solving.
Your Honor, same question.
Well, let's just talk about today. At 8:00, I went into courtroom 3C, no, where were we? 3D. And we did essential hearings, trying to get people out of jail. At 9:00, we went in for in-person pleas and got rid of a lot of cases. And I'm the duty judge this week, so I've read 3 warrants today, turned down one of them. One homicide, one burglary, and I think another one was a grand theft. This afternoon, I'm doing a civil hearing for a motion to set aside a year-old judgment. We'll see how that goes. And then, for your edification, county court is going to start doing what we do differently. Right now, we rotate weeks. We do criminal, civil, and we do something different every week, which is fun but not efficient. We're going to separate. We're getting an extra judge. We're going to have 9 county court judges now. We're going to do 6 judges are going to do criminal, and 3 judges are going to do civil.
You guys are getting civil case managers too, right?
3 civil case managers.
And Mr. Pika, same question. What is a typical day for you?
It's me trying to be the best me I could be on a daily basis. My job is changes often. I'm a husband and father of 2, so before I even leave the house, I gotta try to be good to my kids and wife and things of that nature. And then when I go to work, what I do, I travel. So a lot of days I'll be in the office, and so I get in and I got to do my job, but I also have to check on my attorneys and check on the staff because I'm this hybrid prosecutor / office manager type of thing. And then as far as the work is concerned, you just got to stay on top of your stuff. If I have investigations, I'll check with the cops, and if I have a filed case, I'll make sure that I have all the evidence and things of that nature. But it's constantly. You're constantly working to make sure you don't make a mistake. I don't want to steal, her, but there's a fear. You don't want your office to look bad. You don't want to look bad. You don't want your attorneys to look bad. You don't want the investigation to stink. You don't want the prosecution to fail. So it's more about, over-prepared is just prepared enough.
All right. At this time, I'm going to open it up for the people who are in the audience. If you guys have any questions, raise your hand and you can ask them. Anyone have any questions they want to ask? All right.
My name is Tom Guthrie. I'm a prosecutor just down the street here. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm curious to hear what you would say is the most consistently challenging aspect of your current jobs.
The salary. That would be the most consistent, issue for me. I'll pass it off now.
So monetarily speaking, collections, family law has a specific issue with collections because you're talking about people with real money, like it's their money out of their purse. It's not, it still hurts with a business. It still hurts with a medical practice. It probably doesn't hurt so many with insurance companies, but these people have to pay their bills and it's expensive. So billing people and having to tell them like, hey, we won your trial, but also you have to pay me still, or hey, we lost your trial and also you have to pay me still, is really difficult because they're already kind of in a low spot. So billings and collections is probably the worst part of private practice. Any private practice across any field.
There's nothing bad about being a judge. I up until yesterday, what's today, Wednesday? Up until yesterday, I did most of the treatment courts, Veterans Court, Mental Health Court, and Drug Court. And it was the most rewarding thing I did as a judge, doing those things. It's frustrating to try to make the right decision when you have people who have these issues and they're mentally ill or they have severe substance abuse issues, and you're trying to do the right thing to get them the help they need. And I don't want to make the wrong decision. The state attorney's office and I have fought a lot regarding who to let into the court, and I let in people they didn't want me to let in because it's my opinion that the only reason not to let somebody in if they meet the requirements, they're mentally ill or they have a substance abuse issue, is if they're amenable to treatment, which I'm a lawyer, I don't decide whether they're amenable to treatment. A treatment provider decides that. And if they're dangerous. And if they're dangerous, I don't let them in. Or if they do something dangerous while they're in court, I kick them out. And so those decisions were some of the hardest I made, trying to decide who gets to stay, who gets to come in. And people, I had a young woman who I let into the court with the state, with an agreement from the state. And she has severe mental illness. While she was in mental health court, she attacked her father. Lucky for her, she attacked her father because the father being the victim, he said, I still want my daughter to be in mental health court. So we let her stay. And then a couple of months later, she threw a brick at her neighbor's car as the neighbor was passing by. I had to say no. She needs mental health court, but I can't have people on the streets who are going to commit violence. So that was one of the toughest decisions I made, to kick her out of the court. She doesn't, I'm not going to say whether she deserves to go to prison, but she is. That's one of the toughest decisions, who to keep in and who to kick out of it. But I don't have to do it anymore.
On the opposite side of that, what is the most rewarding part about the career that you've chosen? I'll start with Your Honor.
I'm a judge. I mean, there is nothing bad about being a judge. I took a pay cut to be a judge when I raised 2 kids being in private practice, and we were I guess we call my firm a medium-sized firm, 10 to 12 lawyers, really small, but for Fort Myers, it's a medium-sized firm. And you ate what you killed. If you didn't make money, you didn't take money out. So that was stressful for like almost 20 years. I did that. And that was during the time that my kids were growing up. And I think I became a judge when they were in high school. So I love being a judge. It's after having done civil litigation for 17 years and some criminal defense, this is a cakewalk.
Ms. Richmond Miller?
I would say checking on past clients is the most rewarding thing, because you get to see where they are, what they've done, whether you were successful or didn't exactly get, what they were looking for. Meeting with them and seeing them and getting to know where their children are a lot of times after a case is the most rewarding because I think 100% of the time they have been better off.
Working for the government involves a certain amount of sacrifice. But the flip side of that is it's rewarding. As a prosecutor, I'm representing the great state of Florida, and I'm prosecuting on behalf of the people of whatever county I'm practicing in. On the flip side of it, if I was a public defender, you are the line between an overzealous government and the citizens and things of that nature. So I would say as a governmental attorney, it's just doing good work to benefit society is the reward. I will say one thing that I learned as I've gotten older and more mature as an attorney. When I first started in the Punta Gorda State Attorney's Office, the cases were about understanding the law and winning. I was a former athlete. I had a competitive streak in me. It was about, I want to win all my trials and I want to do this and I want to do that. As I've gotten older, I realized that it's just not a file, or now it's not just a screen. Every single one of my cases is involving people's lives, whether I'm trying to put them away or the victims or so on and so forth. So as I've gotten older, not only do I think it's rewarding to work for the government and give back to society, but I think I have an important job because, whether it's a misdemeanor DUI or it's some sort of manslaughter case, people's lives are never, ever, ever going to be the same after this event.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions they want to ask?
What's the craziest case that you've tried or been involved in? Like the craziest, most unique?
Sir?
Trying to decide where I should go with this.
I have
Go ahead.
multiple pages of.
Yeah. Let's just start with the first trial I ever did. It's funny. I mean, it's not interesting, but I was a young prosecutor. I'd been there like 3.5 days, and they threw me into a courtroom and said, "You're going to try a battery case today at 1, bench trial." I said, "All right." So I went back to my office, started writing down the elements of a battery and venue and ID, right? Very important for criminal case. And so I pretty much got everything done. I'm reading the facts of the case. And another lawyer that came into my office has been there like 3 weeks longer than I have. He goes, "What are you doing?" I'm doing a battery case in front of Judge Anderson, which, you remember Judge Anderson, don't you? He was a nightmare, but I loved him. He goes, "I'm doing a battery too. You can just watch me do mine, and then you can do yours." So we went up and, we were sort of, walking up to the courtroom, and Judge Anderson took the bench and he was as angry as he ever was. And he says, "Who's going first?" And the lawyer goes, "Hey, you go first." So I tried my first case. I called the witness, and the facts are the victim cut off the defendant in a parking lot and took a space from the defendant. Shot the defendant a bird. The defendant got out of his car, punched the victim through the window of his car. Technically, that's a burglary with a battery, but somebody, it's my third day. Somebody filed it as a battery. So I asked the victim, I go through it all. It happened in Lee County, Florida. "Do you see the person who committed the battery here today?" And he looked at the defendant and he goes, "Well, that looks like him, but the guy was fatter and bald." And I went, "Your Honor, may the record reflect this witness has identified the defendant?" And Judge Anderson said, "No, Mr. Sweat. Let the record reflect this victim thinks he identified the defendant. Do you have anything else?" I said, "No, Judge, I think I'm done." So the judge just asked the defendant what happened, and for why the defendant, he didn't have an attorney. The defendant goes, "Well, Judge, that was my dad." And he was driving my car that day, and y'all arrested me for it. So that was the first case. I had his dad arrested.
That's a great one.
That is good. Yes, mine are not nearly as funny.
Listen, I'm sort of numb to it at this point. You know, I've been prosecuted for 15 years. I can barely remember half the cases that I prosecuted at this point, never mind what was crazy, you know. You see some crazy stuff, but it's all normal for me now. So, you know, to answer the question, what was the craziest? I don't really have a fact pattern to give you. I would say that the most exhaustive experience that I've ever had was before the pandemic, the October before the pandemic, I had a case in Naples and it lasted 6 weeks. It was a 6-week trial. And, you know, as a prosecutor, you know, I've had cases a couple of days, I've had cases a week, but 6 weeks, it was, to be dialed in and to be in trial mode for so long, it was just something I never experienced in my entire life. And so, yeah, that's what I would say is some of the most memorable, just being in a hotel for 6 weeks and working all day in trial and then prepping your witnesses for the next day, because you couldn't prep them in the beginning of the trial. They would forget everything by the time. So it was just, it was an experience, and it made me realize that, you know, when you hear about stuff like some of these civil firms where they go to trial for 2 months at a time or things of that nature, it's just, trial work is, yes, trial work is a very, very exhausting thing.
I would agree.
Let's see. Politically interesting. Probably over the last year, I've had 3 or 4 people come in to get a divorce because their heterosexual partner has now become homosexual. So that's been happening a lot lately. And they all come in and they're like, I'm going to tell you the craziest thing you've ever heard. I'm like, okay, lay it on me. And then they say it, and I'm like that. Someone came in here yesterday and told me that. So
They did it with whipped cream.
yeah. Right. So I actually have a client right now who has a number of children, a higher number than most families, whose partner has now decided they're homosexual. So that's always interesting when they come in and that's the reason they're getting a divorce. But I did get my first aha moment in 8 years. I had to hire a PI in a case. Obviously, lots of parents drink in front of their children. It's okay to have alcohol around your children, but if there's substance abuse or mental health problem, a lot of times there's protection in family law cases where you're not supposed to be doing that. And there was an agreement between parties that they were not going to consume in front of their child. The dad kept consuming. The child keeps repeating that dad's consuming. He's driving with the child in the car. So we finally got to hire a PI, and the PI caught the dad consuming like bottles of alcohol out at a restaurant in front of the child. And I got to go before actually Judge Hawthorne. And she was not happy that the dad lied about consuming, and the PI got to say, oh yeah, that's the guy. And he was sitting there drinking, and here's all these pictures of him drinking with the child in the pictures. And
Yeah, lying doesn't go over well.
no, but in family law cases, it's very hard to catch liars because it's always a he said, she said. Morality doesn't really come into play because everybody has a different moral compass, unless of course it's murder, then hopefully most people are on the same page. But yeah, so you don't really get a chance to decipher he said, she said. All of your clients think that they're the more moral and the more honest person. But that was just like black and white. He totally lied to the judge, and I got to be like, ha-ha, for once in my life. So
We used to call that a Perry Mason moment.
Yeah,
None of y'all know who
exactly.
Perry Mason is.
So that was exciting.
I'm just curious as to what is a higher than normal amount of children?
Like 2 or 3 is pretty normal, I think.
Oh,
A lot higher than that.
all right. So what is the best career advice that you would give to young or new lawyers? Start with Mr. Pika.
This is probably just good life advice, but work hard and do the right thing. That's it. You know, whatever practice of law that you're going to be in, you're going to have people relying on you, whether it's your clients, whether it's your bosses. You know, you want to work hard. You want to care about your work product. You know, you don't want to be a slacker or things of that nature. And the other thing is, you want to do what's right. You want to, be an advocate for your position. You want to be ethical. You just, You know, if people want to work hard and do what's right, society as a whole will probably be better. But I would say that as far as an attorney, just, you know, make sure you're always trying to do the right thing and work hard. You know, I hate to say this, but, you know, I travel a lot and I come across a lot of attorneys and you know, I'm involved with the bar and all this. And, you know, the judge may want to talk about it a little bit, but you know, there's a lot of unimpressive attorneys out there. We are supposed to be one of the most important professions in society. So you should strive for that. Mediocrity is not enough.
I like that. Mediocrity
Oh,
is
yeah.
not enough.
I would echo that, and then I would also say, don't sacrifice your career over one single case or client. There are a lot of attorneys in all areas of practice that get really involved in the facts of that specific case, and they treat opposing counsels really poorly. And all the people in this room are who are going to be referring you cases throughout your practice, and they're going to be asking you for legal advice, and they're going to be seeing you at these events. And so I would just say, you know, it's not worth it. You're going to be here a lot longer than that case. Hopefully, if this is your goal to be an attorney, I would just wouldn't sacrifice your practice area or your practice or your reputation over a single case. I've had a lot of clients ask me to do things that aren't appropriate, that don't comply with the law, that are really pushing envelopes that shouldn't be pushed because they want it their way. And so I would say that your job as the attorney is to do what's right and not necessarily just what they want, even at the risk of losing that case.
Right, I agree with that 100%. I'll end with what I think is the most important thing is, but you know, your word is everything when you're on board. You know, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but when I tell somebody something, everybody who I've dealt with knew that's what was going to happen because I told them that. Still do your letters, but you know, your word is everything. Once somebody doesn't believe you, then you go down. When you come in front of a judge, be prepared. All right, don't. And again, one case is not worth losing your reputation over. But on the other hand, you're not there to impress me or to make me happy. That's not your job, and I'm fine with that. All right. I don't really like people to say stupid stuff, but you know, maybe go in front of a mirror, and if you can't say it without laughing, don't tell me that. All right. So be prepared. Be honest. Don't do something unethical or illegal. Do the right. I love that word. Do the right thing. That's tougher for a defense attorney than a prosecutor, because really prosecutors, that's what your job is, to do the right thing. The defense attorney, and I was a criminal defense attorney. I've represented some scumbags. While you do the right thing, but there's edges on that. To be honest, you don't. I've had people who I thought did it, and I could still defend him. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So be prepared and do the right thing. But the most important thing to a successful career is to put your family first. There's nothing more important than your family. You got to work many hours. I agree with that. I work way too many hours. But I would always go home to make sure my kids got put to bed, and then I would do 3 or 4 more hours after they went to bed. So you got to work hard, but make sure your family's the first thing in your life.
Great answers. I'm going to open it up one more time, see if anyone else from the audience has any further questions before.
I'm Melissa Sherman, not exactly a new lawyer, but I'm starting a new chapter in my life after being a public defender. So I guess my question, even though it doesn't sound like any of you have done solo practice, what advice, if any, just based on your observations, would you give as far as advice to solo practitioners or people wanting to open up a small law practice? What pitfalls have you seen? What things you think work, and what sets a solo apart from other large firms?
So you should talk to Tiffany for a wrestle after this, because she is a successful solo practitioner. But I didn't answer the mentor question, but I would say, as it relates to having a solo practice, have mentors, multiple mentors. Had I answered that question, I would have said you probably want about 3. I remember having older mentors who were exceptional in the area of practice that I was practicing that were very helpful, but because they were exceptional, they were very busy, so they didn't have a lot of time for me. So there's like an older attorney that's exceptional in the law you want to talk to, so you're not making any malpractice areas or crossing any malpractice area boundaries. Someone who's younger and kind of with it, because my exceptional attorney still handwrote all of his notes and didn't enter his own time, which isn't really applicable. So having someone who is younger and could tell you, you know, this is how you deal with the Excel spreadsheet, or, you know, whatever it is in that specific practice area. And then someone you can go to with really anything, like your peers more so than, you know, I wouldn't tell, there's just certain things you don't feel comfortable going and telling an older mentor something because you're concerned, but there are still other people that are your peers that you'll respect what their opinion is, even though they don't have that length of time in the practice area. So I would just say the more people you can have support you, the better.
And I'll actually add to that because I was solo for about 4 years. Build connections with people and really like just focus, join organizations, network, especially with your fellow attorneys, because a lot of times, you know, I was doing family law, but you know, if I couldn't take a case, I may send it over to Kayla, or you know, if I needed to, or I got a referral for a PI case, I may send it to someone else. So just, you never know who's going to refer you cases. So that's definitely a tip that I would give you as well. All right, any other questions? So the last question I want to ask you guys, and this is kind of a curveball. If you weren't practicing law, what would you be doing?
I would own the wine bar. No, seriously, I have the name picked out now.
What's the name?
I'm not telling you.
She's like, they'll still have
It's not
Not
patented.
trademarked.
Yeah, it's not trademarked yet. I have a logo. I like wine.
I'd be stuck on a dairy farm.
You know, if I would imagine if I wasn't practicing law right now, I would have went into the family business, which is, you know, Italian fine foods and delicatessens and things of that nature. If I could do it all over again, I'd probably do the exact same thing because I don't know what I know now. But if I could go back, knowing what I know, and do it all over again, I think I would probably try to go into like sports broadcasting or something along those lines. Be in that life in some sort of capacity. So now I look back and like, for example, right now the European Championships are on, and you know, there's these people being paid to watch games and talk about it. That sounds like a pretty good gig. So if I could go back with the knowledge I have now, I'd go into broadcasting.
Some of them are horrible too.
Yeah.
I'd be one of those horrible ones. Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine this accent on the TV? You know what I mean?
Your accent is on TV.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I definitely learned a lot of information. I had a great time speaking with all of you. We want to give you a little thank you gift from the YLD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
No, this was unnecessary. Thank you so much.
Very nice. This will be right next to my
Brown.
secretary.